Hey nerds, thanks for sending over Jenny, Liam. Anyways, I'm just gonna poke that real quick, and so usually when it comes to pull or pass, we do a whole presentation style kind of thing, kind of affair, but unfortunately a lot of the plugins that I'm working with are kind of busted. I went back to the whole triangle things and just, it's been a nightmare. I've been working with the company, apparently it's something to do with Windows 10, so I'm working on it, but now it's time, I feel, to do a pull or pass, but this time maybe focus more on, you know, trying to recreate a presentation that isn't so much a presentation, if that makes any sense. We're going to be changing up the style, at least for this video, and only this video. Unfortunately, I don't have Jenny anymore. I kind of gave her away. Yeah, we'll talk about that a little bit later, but anyways, I figured we'd do this, we'll try it out, and you guys can give me your opinions on it. So, let's hop right on in to the first unit that you can get, and as always, we start with colorless, and our colorless this time is this lovely lady by the name of Jenny. Thank you again, Liam, for sending her over, which I don't think was intentional, but it does help out. So, Jenny, as you can see here, is, you know, I'm going to put her stats on the left side, and again, these stats, just so we're clear, all neutral. Also, the attack stat does not include the weapon might, so be aware. First off and foremost, let me just click here and there. One thing you're going to notice about her when it comes to stats is that her attack is actually obscenely high, considering. As a healer, getting into the upper, 30s is not something you often see, especially for a healing unit. And again, this is not including weapon might, so it can go well beyond that if you actually have the proper IVs, and that's kind of scary. So Jenny can be terrifying in her own right because of, well, her own abilities that do magnify her ability to actually attack as a healer, which is strange, or at least a staff user. I guess we can't really call them healers anymore. Anyways, let's go over these real quick. So, first off and foremost, her weapons, of course, include Assault and Gravity as the weapons you can get and upgrade into. Her assists include Heal, Mend, and Physic. I'm not too thrilled about seeing Physic again on another healer. It's a great ability in its own right on other games, or at least in other games, but I feel if you want to, maybe replace that with Rehabilitation or something. Just me, though. And of course, her specials include Imbue and Heavenly Light, which are always, Imbue is always the staple. Heavenly Light is very interesting in its own ability. A full AoE heal is always pretty nice, but mostly what we're here to talk about is her passives, and in general, well, yeah, her staff is going to be boosted by this because her passive is Wrathful Staff, which allows her to basically do the same damage most other units do, which we've gone over before. No longer is she bound by the reduced by half kind of calculations that go on with staff users, so that, that plus 30 attack will then be used quite substantially with Jenny. And she's definitely a very useful healer in her own right. I'm going to say in your own right a lot, just so we're clear. But, as a healer, she's actually pretty substantial. Typically, when it comes to healers, it used to always be about, well, I guess, having a bit more defense, maybe some resistance. She does have quite a lot of resistance as well, so let's go over the pros and cons of what Jenny can do. So first off, I would have to say she has very high attack, and that blends very well with her Wrathful attack. Second off, she has extremely high resistance as well, meaning that she can't be plucked off by mages. In fact, she might actually be able to kill the mages, especially if they attack her, without... I'm not talking about dragons, I'm talking about pure mages. So, yeah. Honestly, Jenny is a decent enough pull. I don't know if she would be the most amazing you can get. Her negatives include that she has very low defense, especially if you end up with a Bane in defense. Her health is moderate, and I don't know how well Wrathful Staff on its own will do as a passive. It's kind of a bit odd. And Physic as well is a bit restrictive in how it works. I feel, again, it's a little bit of a lesser heal just for the distance, which is not that great. So, all in all, Jenny here is a decent enough pull. She's not the most amazing, but she does have some unique quirks that make her very fascinating to try out. And, I mean, that's about it there. So let me just... I'm going to now hop over to my actual team select screen, and we're going to go over the rest of the units there. So let me just jump over there. Alright, hey guys, we're back. And now it's time to talk about red units. And red units, we only have one of, so let's just hop right on in. Here is Celica. Oh dear, our darling little Celica, a caring princess. Stats, of course, are on the left screen. We don't have to go through skills on the right because, well, we have them right here. So let's just dive right on in and look her over and see what makes her tick. So, right from the start, you can see here that she has Ragnarok. And Ragnarok is a unique tome only to her. And what this does is that when she attacks, if she's at 100% health, she will get an additional attack and speed of +5. But after that, after that turn, she will then take 5 damage, which to me is basically an inbuilt fury in a sense, but only under select conditions, and that of course is the condition that she has a certain amount of health. And that's nice. Ragnarok has enough might that it is pretty substantial in its, in its abilities. And I think for the most part you won't really be using that, huge advantage of a nuke at the start, with, outside that first time, unless you have some way to regain health. But still, Ragnarok is a pretty nice tome. I think it's pretty, well, neat, at least for me. Rising Light, Blazing Light, typical AoE stuff, nothing too crazy. I don't know the formations they take, but, if you like AoEs, I suppose you can use those. Here's Distant Defense, and Distant Defense is something that only she has. And honestly, it can really help her out if she needs it. And what it does is, if she's attacked by, bows, daggers, magic, or staff, she will take, at least at capped, it's 6, she'll gain +6 defense and resistance, which are very nice, and can help her survive a bit more if she really needs it. I don't know if you would, it does take up an A slot, which can be a bit detrimental to some, but As base unit, that's a pretty nice ability to get. And then, of course, we have Spur Defense. And Spur Defense is okay. It's nothing too crazy at the max. It's, adjacent allies get +4 during combat. +4 defense, at least. I thought that was kind of obvious. But anyways, let's talk about what makes Celica here really tick when it comes down to it. So let's go over pros and cons, and then we'll move on. So, first off, here we go. Attack. Attack is crazy. She has probably the, I wouldn't say the highest attack of a red tome unit because she, she's decent enough there. But, including the Might of Ragnarok, she has pretty high attack. What really sets her apart, though, is that she also has the speed to back it, which is pretty crazy. It means that she might be doubling quite a lot. And, she will be a very good nuking tome user, which is what tome users usually need to be. Outside of that, when it comes to pros, Ragnarok is a pretty nice tome, and Distant Defense are decent enough abilities to really boost her out there in case you don't want to skill inheritance or you don't have the, the units to do so. She can definitely pack a punch and have a little bit more defense when needed. But on the con side, I will say, her defense and her resistance are somewhat low, at least comparatively to all of her other stats, and that is definitely not the best thing. But outside of that, Celica is probably the best unit you can get out of this whole summon pool, and she's definitely something you're going to want to try to get if you need a good red tome user. Aim for Celica right now. She's available, and she's pretty amazing. Alright, so let's move on to the next unit, shall we? Alrighty, it's time to move on to our next unit. I do apologize for the sudden cuts and things, but when I usually produce these presentations, it's a little bit more nuanced and you don't really see the cuts, but since I don't have that advantage right now, we'll just have to work with it. And, well, it's time to talk about blue units, and there's only one blue unit this time around, and that, of course, is our Bundle of Energy May. As you can see, her stats, again, as always, left side of the screen. And we're going to go over her skill set real quick. So, she actually has a new brand of tome in a line of tomes that we have not seen before. That, of course, is the Owl Tome. This follows a lot of other things that We've had animal tomes that follow these kind of advantages and things like that, but this time we have owl tomes, which during combat, units' attack speed, defense, and resistance are boosted by a number of adjacent allies times 2, which means, mostly, to give you an example, if you have 3 allies near her, she gets +6 to all of those stats. That's the basic spiel there. And outside of that, she has a command skill and drop back, which is always useful. And from there, we have Desperation, which she can take advantage of and is actually pretty, good at least I think. And then from there we have Blue Tome Experience 1, 2, and 3, which honestly, that's kind of a niche thing to have, but it does help her level up a bit, I guess. Yeah, I mean, why not? Outside of that, Desperation, of course, is probably the main standout when it comes to her abilities there, along with her new tome. And I guess we'll just talk about this because we can. Let's go over what makes May here so special. So first off, let's just talk about her stats. So let's go over pros and cons. So, let's see. Alright, attack is one of her standout abilities, and her speed is nothing to sneeze at either. These are, well, her big things. She actually, if you have a Bane or a Boon in certain things, like, if you have a Boon in attack, you might do a lot better, or a Boon in speed are always pretty nice. And she can definitely take advantage of those. She will be able to not only attack hard, but also attack fairly fast. And of course, since she has an owl tome, you can, bundle these up with your allies and get a bit more mileage out of her stats with these abilities. However, outside of that, let's go over the cons. And the cons right now, at least for her, are 1, her defense is miserably low. Her resistance is fine. It's in a decent area. I guess I should probably add that to pros as well. Pros has good resistance as well. And honestly, that could be a bit of a disadvantage. And she also lacks a special skill. That's just, well, that's kind of obvious what that is. And, I feel Blue Tome Experience is a bit of just, this kind of niche little, what is it? Just not really something you would want to use outside of maybe leveling up, obviously, and it kind of just sucks up a slot that isn't really needed to. And you can easily fix that with skill inheritance, but since we're going off base unit right now, that kind of sucks. Also, outside of that, Owl Tome is a little bit also niche because it does require your team to be around her, which more often than not, they won't be. So be prepared that Owl Tome won't really get too much use there. And, that, just be ready, just in case. Outside of that, though, she is a very capable blue unit, and if you build her correctly, she can get pretty close to Lind, who is the be-all for blue tome units. So, I can safely say she is probably the second best unit you can get out of this pull, and if you do get her, you can't go wrong. While I do list a bit more cons on this one, they're mostly just because of the niche nature of some of her abilities. Outside of that, though, she still does pack that punch, and she does it fairly well. So, that's about it for May here, guys. Let's go talk about the last one, and the saddest thing to me in all history of this game. And now it's time to panic because we're going over the one character I actually wanted so bad, and it's a green-colored unit, and it's my boy Bowie. And of course, he's a skillful survivor. God bless him, but no. Anyways, let's talk about his abilities and see what happens, huh? Okay, so Gronow, it's basically the green equivalent to, May's Tome, and you get the basic same thing, so we're not gonna repeat that too much. Glowing Ember and Ignis, they are good abilities for him. As you can see, he has decent enough defense to take these abilities and use them, especially if you have a booned defense. Ignis especially because it uses 80% of the unit's defense, and since we're only going off of base abilities, well, nothing too bad. Earth Boost is a unique ability for him, and what this does is that if he has more than 3 HP than the enemy, he will gain 2, 4, or 6 defense based on the ranking. And then of course we have Renewal, which is 10 health every 4th, 3rd, or 2nd turn. This just gives him more survivability, which is, I guess, tied into his whole title. So, let's talk about Bowie. Let's see what makes him special. Let's see what makes him tick, okay? So, I guess we'll put in the pros right now. He has good HP and defense, which are things that he, as a, a tanky kind of, I guess, tome user is something nice. I mean, he's supposed to be a skillful survivor, in a sense. He was, at least in his game, he was never too overpowered with magic, at least from my understanding. And unfortunately, because of that, he has decent speed and, decent attack, but that doesn't do too much for him. And on the con side as well, his resistance is terrible. Absolutely some of the worst, at least in some regards. And, outside of the survivability, he does not have much to pack a punch outside of Ignis, which can take some charge-up time. And with his tome, of course, we have the Owl Tome, which, as we've spoken of before, it kind of requires, allies around you, and more often than not, you will not have those allies around you all the time, so he will start to take a bit more, of a hit when it comes to not only attack, but everything else. Outside of that, Earth Boost is a unique ability that could help him out, but it doesn't help him out in certain, the certain problems that he does have, mainly resistance, which unfortunately is a thing that continues to happen for him, and it just kind of sucks. So, yeah, that's unfortunate. Out of all of them, Bowie's probably the worst unit you can get out of it, and I hate to say that because as a character, I like him a lot, and that's unfortunate, but honestly, if you already have a Nino, even a 4-star Nino, a 3-star Nino, someone you want to take up, chances are you will do better with that. A Julia, any of those characters will probably do better than Bowie. He seems to be in the Merrick territory where he's meant to be this kind of tanky unit that doesn't, I'm not sure would really find a home in a lot of units, a lot of teams that would be out there, which is kind of unfortunate for him because I like him a lot, but, that's unfortunately the pull of things, guys, and Bowie is probably one of the weaker units you can get out of it. Doesn't mean that he can't be good, it just means that he will need some more inheritance to actually bridge that gap, in a, so to speak. And since he's all built around trying to be defensive, well, unfortunately his resistance just, falls flat, and he's not going to be able to pull that off. It's kind of sucks, but, that's, I have to say, 3 out of 4 is probably the better pull from this. Jenny's alright. She can do a very interesting job of being this attacker and this healer. And outside of that, of course, Celica, which we have right here, does a fantastic job at being what she's supposed to be, this huge, powerful, nuking monster. And then, of course, we have May, who, while having some niche abilities in her passives, has the stats to really pack a punch when needed, and she can definitely do that. If you do get a decent enough Bane and Boon spread, you will do fantastically with her as well. As just make sure you don't have minus attack, just saying. And that's pretty much it. So would I suggest pulling for this? Yes, probably, most likely. I would probably aim for reds and blues if I really were to be a person trying to summon from this. I would skip greens because honestly, unless you're aiming for, something other than Bowie from a green unit, then I highly suggest avoiding greens. And, Jenny's great too, but it's really up to you if you want a staff user or not. And unfortunately for me, I've already gone the different pathways here to try and figure out what we're going to be doing for this. So, outside of that, I hope you guys enjoyed this little presentation. This is the end of Pull or Pass, and I strongly give this a pull, especially if you need some strong tome users out there outside of green. But if you did enjoy this, feel free to leave a like. It always helps out substantially. I love you guys very much. Thanks for checking this out, and as always, do give your opinions on this new presentation, at least for right now, and do tell me what you think. So, alrighty, I'm going to hop off for now, and I'm going to go and take my time to just relax. That sounds so good right now. So, see you soon. Thanks for watching.